And we're at that point in the week where we look ahead at the games we have coming up on Friday night. We have two Thursday night games that we might want to keep an eye on. And this is it. This is the end of the regular season. This is teams' last chance to kind of make a statement, impress the computers, and maybe improve their seeding getting into playoffs, maybe get out of the bubble and into playoffs. But there's still a lot to be played for. Even if you didn't actually win your league, you still got some noise to make in the playoffs. So I'm going to jump right in, and we'll start in the East Valley today. Poly goes into Grant looking to solidify that D2 place they have. They're pretty solid in there. If they come away with a win, they might find themselves hosting again. Grant right now looks like they're near the top of D3. They win, they might find themselves in a D2 setting. This game has a lot going on. Grant has kind of been a little hit and miss in the season. They're coming off that big win against Arleta. And why not try to go out on a high note? That momentum, if it carries through from game to game, is only going to try to buoy them through.
Yeah, and what a high note it would be for Poly to finish this year. If they win this game, they cement the third spot in the East Valley. Something I don't think any of us thought that they would do this year. And just to have that chance to host a playoff game, and get to have your home supporters kind of celebrate the team for and what they've accomplished this year. Because make no mistake about it, when you look around the valley, when you look at teams like Reseda and Van Nuys, and you can put a team like Poly in that same category, this is not a team that's long on numbers. A lot of their kids have to play both ways every snap of the game, and they do have some kids there who we haven't had a chance to see a lot of, but when we have seen them, they've impressed. That running back they have, Somerville, he's the real deal. He's a guy that can wreck a game come playoff time, and he's a guy who might wreck a game next week for playing against Grant. And for Grant, in a season that has been so up and down, so Jekyll and Hyde, it was almost would be apropos that they would win next week, finish the year 500, because that's exactly how this season has been. It's been 50-50. Are they going to play well? Are they going to play consistent? Or are they going to make a lot of mistakes that they should be better than making? Regardless of that, they're still sitting in a position to have them make a strong run in the playoffs. They have the talent to do it. They've got two good running backs. They've got a receiver. They've got a difference-making receiver on the outside. They got a young quarterback that can throw the ball. They've got a defense that can play tough at times when you need it. So both of these teams have the ability to maybe upset the apple cart a little bit when they get into the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting to see how they approach this game against each other this week, because it's still all there to play for both of these teams.
Oh, definitely. And, all there to play for is Verdugo going into North Hollywood. Verdugo Hills beat Chavez. They found their way kind of out of that bubble, we think, in D3. And now they're going into North Hollywood against a team that's probably going to be angry. And that coaching staff is going to want to get them ready. They're going to want to run over Verdugo Hills. And we've seen a couple teams run over Verdugo Hills earlier in the season. Poly put a number on them, which surprised me a little bit. I thought that game might be closer. So you're thinking, you're North Hollywood, we're going to come in, we're going to put a number on them, we're going to go put a hurt. That's the plan. But Verdugo Hills just grinded out a win against Chavez. That's a character win against that Chavez team. And if you're looking to make noise in the playoffs, like Verdugo Hills believes they can, you have a chance to do something against North Hollywood that only Arleta and Monroe have done this season. Chavez had a chance to do it as well. And so that's get dirty, get in the trenches, set the edge, and force them to pass. If Verdugo Hills can take that run game away, they'll be looking to move up in that D3 area where they're at right now. But North Hollywood at the same time, if they can come up with a big win, they might be pushing themselves to the top of D2. They look kind of solid in there right now, but probably get at least 1 or 2 home games. But they might find themselves at the top of the division, which would set them up for home games throughout until they might potentially get into something at the end. So that's a big one in terms of what these teams can do for their seeding.
Yeah, and it's a playoff starting early has to be the attitude for both of these programs approaching this game. If from the like you touched on with the Verdugo Hill side, this has been a regular season they probably want to throw out the window. There have been complications that they haven't expected there to be where they haven't expected things to be so difficult. They stumbled out of the blocks in a lot of these games and just weren't able to kind of keep themselves in it. But the fact of the matter is, we've reached the end of the end point of the season. They're still in a position to be in the playoffs. So you want to put your best foot forward. If there was ever a time that you to finally put your best foot forward and figure some things out, let this be a week that you do so. Because you know what the atmosphere is going to be like playing against that team. It's actually a great way to get prepared for the playoffs because you are walking into a hornet's nest. Because you touched on it. This North Hollywood team is going to be angry. They know in their hearts of hearts that wasn't what happened to them this past week. One, does not change what they've accomplished this year, and also was not indicative of the team that they believe that they are. So this is going to be a week where they're going and ready to go in the playoffs. They know they still have it all to play for. They know they have an opportunity to maybe be a top seed or one of the top seeds in their division when playoff time comes around. In order to cement that, they need to put their foot in Verdugo Hills behind this weekend. So Verdugo Hills has to come into this game knowing that they're going to get their best foot forward. It might have been a different situation had North Hollywood won last week, because maybe they wouldn't come into this game feeling a need of urgency. But now, because of how the chips are falling, there's a little urgency to this Huskies program coming into this week, because they're not trying to go into the playoffs off two losses. They're not the 2 straight losses. They're not trying to do that. They're going to want to get the ship righted and kind of reestablish that identity of what they're going to want to be when they get into the playoffs. So Verdugo better be ready for that fight.
And wrapping up the East Valley is probably a big dogfight. You've got Arleta and Chavez. And this is a game right up your alley. 2 teams, big, physical, in your face. 2 teams that have decent positions right now that it looks like they're in the playoffs, looking at kind of where they stand. And they're just going to fight it out. I would not be surprised if this is like some of these, every other Chavez game this season. It's a 1-score game, and you're talking 7-8, 15-8, 13-6. This is going to be low scoring. It's going to be a dogfight, and it's going to be in the trenches for 48 minutes.
I said a few weeks ago that I told y'all when October 28th came that the game of the season might be played at Chavez High School. There was going to be some teeth on the ground. There was going to be some scratching and some clawing. The dogs was going to be out. I said this because just about every doggone thing I've said this year has rang true. And now when you look at this situation with this particular game, are either of these teams fighting for the league title or any way are fighting? No. But they know who they are. They know what's in front of them. They know what it's going to take if they're going to have postseason success. And that is going to be, we got to sharpen our teeth. And we got to get ready to play our brand of football, which is bully ball. And when that other team lines up in front of us, we're going to knock them in the face and see if they can take it. If you look at a team like Chavez and you say to yourself, well, they're 1-6. Why would they even be in contention? You know why? Because even the computers knows how scary this team is. This is not your typical 1-6 team. Even the computers know you don't mess with Chavez. And here's the thing about Chavez. You want to know the real reason why they're sitting in a position to be a playoff team, even with having one win on the season, is because every week this team goes out and they beat computer projections. You know why they beat computer projections? Because every week they fight you tooth and nail and they make you prove that you can beat them, because they're going to play the way they're going to play. They're going to hang in, they're going to hang in tough. And even though they are a really young team, they are physical and they force you to have to beat them. It's going to be no different for our leader. And here's the thing what our leader figured out this past week. No one's going to lay down to you. Now you're not the defending champs anymore. Monroe's the defending champs. They taken that, even though you beat them. But Grant just showed you it doesn't matter. You have to put your best foot forward. And in a lot of ways, maybe this game last week is the spark that our leader needed going into the playoffs, because how many times this year can we say that this team put 34 points on the board? How many times can we say that this team put 5-6 touchdowns on the board? They haven't done it. This week, they had that last week at homecoming. They had to try to figure out how to move the ball to try to win a ball game. And sometimes those things can kind of spark creativity with your coordinator. They can spark creativity with the coaching staff to understand, you know what, this year has been a struggle offensively to move the ball, but we figured some things out. You got to figure in the playoffs, you're going to see defenses that are sort of kind of that caliber of a Grant. Now, this week, the defense they're playing up against is going to try to kill them. But maybe you figured out some things that you might be able to incorporate to try to as Mike Tomlin would say, survive and get back on the bus. So this game, it's going to be really hard for me not to be at this game, for one. We got to take a hard look at what's going on the last week, because there's a part of me that wants to be there, because I do think that this could be one of those games that could be a launching point for one of these teams to pull an upset or two in the playoffs. They are capable. They are well coached. They are tough teams. These might be, outside of Monroe, to me, these are the two most tough-minded physical teams in this league. So the fact that they're facing each other the last week of the season, when both teams are going to want to try to put their best foot forward because they know the kind of road that's going to be ahead of them in the playoffs, this is going to be a fight. And boy, it is going to be fun to watch. It might not be fun for some people who want to see all free flowing and no. If you like seeing teams just knuckle up and go at it, this is the game for you. I've been saying it. I had this circled on the calendar all year. I've been looking at this Arleta Chavez game at the end of the year, and I said, this is my kind of football. This is what I want to watch. So, yeah, I'm excited.
And there's excitement in the West Valley. We're going to start with Birmingham and Cleveland. Now, it's excitement and disappointment because Birmingham has basically wrapped up this league title. If Cleveland somehow comes in and knocks them off, you're looking at 3 teams with 1 loss at the top. And the other game I'm going to talk about will kind of set it up. But this is Cleveland's chance to show that, no, we can right the ship fully. I mean, they put a pounding on Chatsworth last week. And they've been kind of up and down. We talked about maybe their depth has been exposed a little bit outside of their big playmakers. And Birmingham is going to test every aspect of that team. They're going to test the stars. They're going to test the depth. You know, they're going to test the coaching staff. And I've got no question Gunny's going to have them ready. But that's what this Birmingham program has done to everybody. You know, Bucky Brooks said it. You know, when Granada played them, it was a test all 48 minutes, and Cleveland's going to have it happening right now. They're going to go in and they've got to make a statement. It could help them in terms of playoff seeding. I mean, Birmingham might find themselves crawling out of that 7-8 kind of seed that they might be sitting in the open. But this is going to be that kind of game.
The question that Cleveland is going to have to answer in this game. Let's throw out the playoff seed and let's throw that up. Let's throw that to the side for the moment. Are we good enough to win a city championship? A month ago, we looked at that team before they went to Carson, after what they did to Palisades, and the question at that point, and it wasn't even a question at that point, that look at the players they have, look at what Corey Hall was doing, look at how this season is starting to unfold for them. Okay, maybe they can beat Birmingham, or regardless, they could be one of those West Valley schools that just goes and grabs a city championship. How they play this game will tell the coaches, the players, and the people who are watching that program closely this year how much stock we should buy in you when the next week rolls around for playoffs. Because if you go and you walk into Birmingham and you let Birmingham roll you up, I don't know where the psyche is for these kids heading in the playoffs, because they're too good. They're not going to be D2. They're not going to be D3. They're going to be a D1 playoff team. But there's some killers in D1. One of them is one that already has one over you this year in Granada Hills. Can you play with the upper echelon teams in the city? We know they have the talent. It just has not manifested itself in a consistent level of high play down the stretch of the season. They got things back on track this past week, but this is a big one. Now, you got to get yourself back up, because I'm sure heading into league, they looked at this game circled on the calendar and thought, hey, even if we have one loss, that's enough for us to go in there and take our shot at the Giants. Well, now you go into this game, they've already wrapped it all up, and you've got losses to the two teams sitting ahead of you in that league. But can you go and put an effort together that kind of buys belief back into this program? And conversely, if you're Birmingham, you don't want to play around this week, because playing around this week and not putting your best foot forward, or even losing this game, even though you've already locked up the West Valley, they could easily slip out of the open when playoff comes. And that is not something that this program is. That's it, and that's unacceptable for where this program is in this 5-year in this run of dominance they've put together. They are the reigning kings of the city. That would be a huge blow to this team if they weren't able to get back into that open division playoff and have a chance to defend that title. So they're not going to want to mess around. They're going to come out and put their best foot forward to make sure they land in that area. So if you're Cleveland, you better be prepared that you're going to get their best shot. You're going to get Peyton Waters. You're going to get all the Peyton Waters you want. So are you prepared to put up a fight against a team that looks like it's rounded into shape right as playoff time is rolling around? We're going to learn a lot about what this Cleveland team is made of this week.
Yeah, definitely are. And the next one, in terms of rounding into shape and who is made of what, we've got the big match that I'm kind of excited about. El Camino and Granada Hills. Originally supposed to be a home game for El Camino. They're going to be playing it at Granada because they don't have the field. It sucks for El Camino, but this game is going to be huge. It's going to be on a Thursday, so I'm excited for that one. Let's go. We've been talking about it. Javen Hall and company is going to try to do what only Birmingham has done and that's contain the Stanleys, not wrap them up, because even Birmingham didn't wrap them up. They contained them, and they got it to a point where they escaped with a victory. So can El Camino's defense escape with a victory? No. We saw what they did against. Shoot, I lost his name. We saw what they did against Ramo in Chatsworth. They contained him. He went off for almost 200 yards in the second half, but they contained him long enough for their offense to do their thing and come out with a win. Can they do that on Thursday?
This is such an interesting matchup to me because obviously these are the two teams in the West Valley that managed to give Birmingham trouble in any way, shape, or form this year. So this is two quality squads. They're fighting to see who lands in second place, and quite frankly, they're fighting to kind of put their best foot forward because Granada has a really, really, really good shot at landing the top seed in D1. El Camino has a really, really good chance, based on their resume and what they've done, of landing somewhere near them as a top 3 or 4 seed in D1. So it's all to be played for. But delve deeper into the matchup, Granada has had a tendency this year to really put numbers on people fairly quickly, which kind of sends your entire game plan into disarray, because if you're a run-first team and all of a sudden Dejon Stanley is scored 3 times on 3 touches and you're staring at 21 on a scoreboard, I always think back to that Kennedy game where all of a sudden it felt like you blinked and all of a sudden Kennedy went from being in the game to all of a sudden at halftime being down 40. They have the ability to do that to people. But what makes El Camino different, and even Birmingham got a taste of it this past week, is that even when they're down on the scoreboard, because of how they play, they're always in the game. They can hit you for a big play at any given time. They can match your big play offense. They've got the weaponry and they've got the quarterback with the composure to kind of keep you in a game and keep you in striking distance. And like I said, I had called a few weeks ago, I said this was one of those games where, as good as Granada Hills is, this was a dangerous opponent, because similar to what they faced with Eagle Rock, Eagle Rock's approach to the game was with balance. They had a balanced attack that really kind of contained and kept the Stanleys on the defensive side of the ball more than they were on the offensive side of the ball. So if you're Elko and you can kind of control the tempo of the game and you can control how much you have the ball and keep that ball out of the Stanley's hands, it gives you a better chance to pull this upset. And they're more than capable of doing it. This team is talented. And like I said, they can run the ball. Drayden Fowles can make a play on you. You got big Jake Shirley catching one-handed passes like a big old grizzly bear running down the field. They've got a myriad of ways. We have seen El Camino beat people, not just with their offense or not just with their defense. They make plays on special teams. They play well in all facets of the game. So Granada has to take this game serious, because this is a team that can pull this upset. So it's going to be intriguing.
It definitely is. And it's going to be intriguing how these next two teams wrap up their season, considering that both are kind of neck and neck as they wrap up what was difficult seasons for both.
Mm-hmm.
Taft hasn't had a home game all season, and they're going into Chatsworth, where Chatsworth has been up and down and inconsistent. They have youth and inexperience that seems to have gelled a little bit, but it still has to be tested. I mean, they weren't able to do much against Cleveland last week. So when Taft comes in, that's going to be some questions answered as to what might they look like going into the playoffs.
Yeah, and here's the thing. We're using history to kind of set this thing up. Taft went 0-5 last year in the league and then went and stomped everybody on their way to that narrow victory in the 3-3 championship. There is something about what these teams in the West Valley go through, even the ones near the bottom, and the quality they face in the second half of the year that sets them up to do some things when postseason comes around, because it feels like you're not necessarily facing the same sort of adversity that you kind of had to go through the last month and a half of your season. And a team like Taft has had double adversity with not having any home games and having to face this gauntlet, getting rolled up by Birmingham right out of the gate in the West Valley. They have had to take their lumps this year. But that being said, there's still quality players on both of these teams. We've talked about Isaiah Ramo all year. Taft has kind of flown under the radar because, like I said, they've just kind of not been consistent enough to where they're going to float near the top of any marquee matchups. But there's still talent here, and that coach and Jeff Kieran he's one of the good coaches in the city section, and he's going to have his kids ready to play. So, is this game a launching pad for one of these two teams heading into playoffs? You could win this game. The winner is going to be the one that finally can notch a win in the West Valley going into the playoffs. Or maybe this is a game that launches both of them into a postseason run, because Ramo is definitely talented enough to wreck somebody when he gets in the postseason. Taft, they've already done it, so the belief is there that they can do it again. It's just interesting to see how two teams who have had to take their lumps, how they're going to approach playing each other, because feasibly this is the game that they both probably circled and said, okay, well, this is the one I can win. And you want to just build some positive momentum going into the playoffs. So it's an intriguing matchup. Even though it's two teams that are 0-4 in the West Valley, it still has a lot of intrigue because both of these teams are still going to be in the playoffs, and both of them have shown that when the circumstances are right around the teams, they are capable of playing with some people.
They have, and the thing we look at going into now Valley Mission is some of these teams setting themselves up for next year, to be capable of playing with anybody. And talking about being ready and putting up a fight, we've got a couple programs that have set themselves up to possibly do that next season, and they're building towards it. The one program that has shown some growth and probably the ability to put that foot forward going into next year is Van Nuys, and they're going into Sylmar, who has hung in there with almost everybody they faced and put up that fight. So this is going to be interesting in terms of how does Sylmar finish their season believing that they can get a home game in the playoffs, and how does Van Nuys rebound from having Corey Rowe run all over them, and put a fight up against Sylmar. And they put that fight up against Sylmar, now that they are a team that can do something next year. And I talked to Coach. I think he might have a vision, but he needs a staff. And so we won't know how that's going to turn out until we get after the year, after they take their lumps and kind of revisit and see what are they going to do next. Sylmar, they've got a couple questions to answer. They got beat up by Kennedy, but this is a team that can still make some noise. They can surprise some people in the playoffs. They have the talent to do that. They're still very young. This game is going to probably set them up. Let's see if they can take the momentum, from a Van Nuys game into the playoffs.
Yeah. So you know that when you're talking about Sylmar, it's what some of the other teams we're talking about it's all about their youth. Like they've shown well this year, and the times that they haven't looked great, you could almost point to the fact that they're just young in places. And when they played Canoga Park you could see the point in the game where the youth sort of the youthful exuberance ended, and the youth and inexperience of being against a veteran team, it kind of took them out of the game, and it was a wrap from there. So what's intriguing about this matchup is, like you said, with Van Nuys is right there on that bubble in terms of getting in and having a shot at playing in the postseason. But they have shown incremental growth this year that they are going to, you know, if Silmar thinks that this team is just going to lay down for them, and that's not going to happen. They've shown that they have some fight. So it's going to be an intrigue. It's going to be an intriguing matchup because if you're Silmar, you want to still be putting your best foot forward when playoff time comes around. You don't want to stumble right before the postseason begins. And Van Nuys is going to look to try to see if they can build some momentum, see what they've got here, and see if it's possible for them to get in the playoffs and maybe pull an upset. So, yeah, it's going to be intriguing.
And intriguing, talking about build. And we look at Canoga going into Reseda, and we know Corey Ruel is going to put a number up. We know he's going to run kind of crazy. But the question is, how much fight is Reseda going to have? And we know this team is going to battle. This team is growing. Austin Ward has these kids fighting from whistle to whistle for 48 minutes. And they might not put up any points against this Canoga team because we've seen them struggle in that right. Their numbers are really low. But this is a program that is showing that it can still be relevant in the near future as these kids grow and the numbers come back. You know, Coach Ward is excited about what he can do. And Canoga, again, this is their chance to kind of put that bow on Reseda and live up to that tweet that, you know, Reseda told them not so fast. And go into playoffs with that type of momentum. You know, maybe depending on how they do against the projections, maybe they can lock up a home game in D1. It all kind of depends on what's going to happen and how that's going to roll out.
Yeah, so there's two things that are intriguing about this game. That point right there, for them to have started 0-4 and to be at a point in this season, it's such a remarkable turnaround that with a win against Reseda, they'll be able to say they finished unblemished in the Valley Mission on a 6-game winning streak. And that will probably be enough to put them in a pretty favorable position to play a home game or two come playoff time. Now, but that's not what I'm intrigued about in this game. What I'm intrigued about in this game is something that occurred two weeks ago when Canoga had tweeted, when the Canoga program had tweeted that game against Kennedy was for the de facto Valley Mission Championship, which it was. And Reseda commented under there, hey, you still got 2 games to play. Where clearly they felt like it was a bit in poor form. Now, listen, let's call a spade, right? Canoga had beaten everybody. Kennedy, they've kind of trampled everybody in the league. We've talked about the struggles with Van Nuys and Reseda this year, and San Fernando struggled a bit this year. So we knew by the time we got to that point, we knew what it was. This is the league championship. These are the 2 best teams in the league. So Canoga had every right to kind of feel like, hey, we win this game. We know what's ahead of us. But you kind of have to love Reseda seeing that and saying, hold on a second. Don't start counting. Don't anybody give anybody any roses yet. We still got games to play. And what that tells you is there's a pride around this program that even with the struggles, even with the exits and the lack of numbers they've had, and it's been a tough and difficult road, there's some pride and there's some fight to this program, and they are not intending on this being a coronation for Canoga Park, and they're just going to lay down and get beat 60-0 and just let them go and sit in the middle of the field and take pictures. They're going to come with whatever they've got left in the tank, they are going to fire at Canoga Park, and they're gonna if they're the guy in the street they've only got sticks, and you're marching towards us with muskets. Well, it's just going to be what it's going to have to be, because this team is going to do what they have to do to give Canoga Park everything. They're going to want to rain on that parade. So am I expecting Reseda to beat them? No, but I do respect a team saying, hey, just because we're down right now doesn't mean that people get to kick us. We're going to give you everything we got. So that adds a level of intrigue. That adds a level of where we might see some chippiness in the game that otherwise you wouldn't think there would be much fireworks to it. And yeah, Corey Ruel, he's been a story all the second half of this season. He's got a chance, or one more chance, to put up another big afternoon and really put himself in conversation for Valley Player of the Year. Because what he has done has been phenomenal since he kind of really cemented himself as the lead back in that offense. So yeah, can't wait to see what he does. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that he has another 200-300 yard game with 3 or 4 touchdowns. So yeah, let's line it up and see.
And that leads us to our final game in the city that we're keeping an eye on. And it's a big one. Could be a grudge match. Panorama is hosting Kennedy. Both teams are coming off of wins. Both teams were pretty comprehensive in what they did. But this Panorama defense is hell-bent on shutting everybody down in front of them. And like you talked about earlier, the Canoga Panorama game, that was 23-6. That was 17 points. That was not a blowout by any stretch of the imagination. So they held Canoga to 23. Yes, it was the first game of league, still getting rolling, this, that, but it's still an accomplishment when you hold the kid who has run over everybody. And now they have a chance to try to do that to Gore Ibrahimian, do that to, Fuentes Gutierrez, and hold that Kennedy team down and let their offense try to run around them. It's going to be a big matchup. It's one of the ones that I'm excited about. And it's going to have a lot of implications on where they sit after Friday in terms of playoffs.
Yeah, so a lot of playoff implications about where these teams could line up. But just in general, this is one of those matchups where you just look at the two squads. Kennedy, probably a bit upset at the idea that they thought that they would be in a little bit better position this season. I think that Troy Cassidy and that program had their eyes set on not just being a D1 team, but being a team that they thought was capable of sitting maybe in the top half of D1 and really putting themselves in for D1 home playoff games. Because like I said, they were a bit of the darling going into the season. But then you look at Panorama and you look at what they did last season, how they've rolled that success into this season, and they are in the process, and that coaching staff are in the process of building a program that they want to see compete at the top of the Valley Mission for the foreseeable future. And you look at the talent that they're putting together and the way they've gone about their business, it doesn't look like this team is going to be going away anytime soon. And this is a chance to make a statement this week and beating Kennedy and saying, hey, you got to include us. When you talk about the top of this league, when you're talking about the teams that are sitting at the top of the Valley Mission, the Pythons are in that conversation, and we are going to be in that conversation going forward. Don't get it twisted. Just because we don't have a long history, we're in the process of building that history. We're in the process of building an identity around this program. And let's call a spade a spade. You look at where these schools are located. You look at where Panorama and Sylmar and Kennedy and at San Fernando and that little area, that little pocket of that portion of the valley, these games matter into the perception of kids who are coming up in terms of, I could go to this school or I could go here. I think I might want to go to Panorama because look at what they're doing over there. Look at what that staff is doing. Look at what they're building. First of all, the Pythons might be the coolest name in all of the valley in terms of just mascots and team names. So there's a chance here to kind of cement themselves that they are a team that watch kind of going forward in the next coming years. And a win over Kennedy kind of really puts that stamp like, hey, we're here. So yeah, I expect both teams to put their best foot forward. Kennedy has shown that, like what they did to Selmar last week, that they're kind of getting back to basics of the things they do well, and it's going to be interesting to see if Panorama can stop it.
Yeah, and going to stopping, there is no stopping Village when they're rolling like this. Village Christian is going into Valley Christian. Valley has had a bit of a tough year in that sense. We haven't seen them because they're way out in Cerritos. But watching kind of what they've done, looking at comparable opponents, Village Christian should go in and set themselves up for a really good seeding in the playoffs. You got the Everetts in tow. You've got a defense who's doing a lot of good things. I fully expect them to go in on Thursday night and handle their business and then sit pretty when the Southern Section playoffs are released.
Yeah, and like I said, it's been a Chase Everett show, and it's not going to stop anytime soon with him being so young and establishing himself at the position. I expect them to kind of go into Valley Christian, play Valley Christian, and put a number on them. And yeah, it's all about building momentum for the postseason. The Southern Section, it is a tough road to hoe no matter where you sit when it comes to postseason time, because the talent's just different when you start talking about the Southern Section. But Chase Everett is kind of showing you that there is hope. There's reason to have hope that they'll do things in the future. But hey, it might be a year too with some of the veteran players he has to make a run this year and make some noise. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they wrap up.
And the big matchup in the Valley, coming out of the Southern Section, Sierra Canyon goes into Notre Dame, looking to put a bow on their first Mission League title in their first season in the Mission League. This is going to be very, very interesting. I'm excited to try to watch it. It depends kind of how we break it down, but this is going to be a big one coming out of the Southern Section for us.
Yeah, and here's the thing. When you look at Sierra Canyon, it's been a bit of an up and down year. I think even for that coaching staff, they would probably say that there were a game or two that they have dropped this year that they thought they firmly should have had a grasp on. And last week, what they did to Chaminade, a team that was going into that game, was sitting in 7th or 8th in the entirety of the Southern Section. They went in there and they put a beating on them on that Smurf turf. So it's interesting to see how Sierra Canyon has stepped into the Mission League and winning this game this week, because they still they're obviously in the driver's seat, but they still need to beat Notre Dame in order to kind of wrap up and take the league title. A loss and a Chaminade win would still give Chaminade the league, so they have to win. But to walk into the Mission League, in a league that's not an easy league to win, and win on your first year, really would send some shockwaves around the valley in terms of those teams that kind of fight for talent and fight for the attention of these kids to go to their program. That I saw myself on social media, a lot of these kids were talking about, hey, did you see what Sierra Canyon did to Chaminade? So there was some talk there, but you have to follow that up by finishing the deal. And make no mistake about it, Notre Dame has been an up and down year. We saw them they beat Birmingham this year, so we saw the best of them when they can play well, and they've been kind of up and down. but they're more than capable of beating you if you aren't ready to play. If Sierra Canyon thinks they've got this thing wrapped up and they don't go into that game with their best foot forward, Notre Dame has talent they can to ruin what you thought would be your first coronation as the Mission League champions. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. It's going to be also interesting for Sierra Canyon because now coming off of that Chaminade win, if they put a big number up against Notre Dame, that could work out really favorable for playoff seeding for them as well. So yeah, very, very intriguing matchup in the southern section for us in the Valley.
And that's going to wrap it up for us looking ahead at all the games we got going this week. I'm excited. I know Kenny's excited. And stay tuned as we put together the gems, let you guys know where we're going to be. And we're going to try to put a bow on this ourselves and really try to make sure we're hammering home on all these games. So, as we always say, thank you for listening. Thank you for, letting us know that you're watching, you're reading, you're listening, you're there with us. And keep the love, share the love, spread the love, because that's what we're all about right now. We want to show love to the Valley. We want to show love to these kids, and we want to spread it all out because there isn't enough of it.
Yeah, and the only thing I got to say on the back of that is don't sleep on the Valley, and don't sleep on us because we're gonna be there, and we're gonna be there at every step of the way to put the shine on these kids. And we look forward to what the postseason brings. Oh, and keep peeled, because as soon as those brackets are out, we're also going to do a deep dive in those brackets and tell you exactly where our kids are. Maybe make a prediction or two. I've been a genius this year. I might have some up my sleeve. So y'all just stay tuned for that as well.
And we'll see you all next week.
Peace.